Here we go. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our latest weekly panel discussion webinar, whatever we want to call it. But this week, the new normal turns 43, I think it is today, the 43rd one. And today, for anybody that's been around in the 70s, we're calling it Are You Being Served? All about being served in-store, online, and how we're looking at the world of getting personal. So how personalization is evolving more from being where we used to do it on the digital side with the commerce, now to how we can bring digital in store and how we can actually meld the two and make it altogether experience. And really pleased that today we are joined for his hat-trick ball by Chris Loveridge from SAP, who's always provided great discussions when he's been on. As always, if it's your first time, welcome. And if you've been before, thanks for supporting us. Please be interactive. We enjoy it when it gets interactive. There's a chat box there. Please feel free to ask your questions, express your opinions, tell us we're wrong, do whatever, and it just adds all to the fun. So let's have an interesting hour. And with that, I will pass over to my colleague, Shahid Latif.
Thank you, Steve. For once this week, you haven't called me your co-conspirator, which is nice.
Time yet.
I must have done something good. So thank you and welcome everybody to our 43rd episode of the New Normal webinar. This week's episode is all about getting personal in store and online. It's about personalization, customer experiences. How do you make it special for customers in retail? This whole series has really begun from last year. As you know, for those of you who are attending repeatedly, you will know that we started back in March, I think it was, of 2020. It was a response Steve and I had to thinking about what was lying in front of us through COVID and lockdown. And we wanted to upskill, we wanted to learn more, we wanted to gather some insights and some coping mechanisms and share those with the community. And that's what we've tried to do over the past 42 episodes up to today. Diverse subjects, diverse guests, and we're very grateful for every one of them for sharing their knowledge with us. Today's topic, as we said, is getting personal in store and online. What we're recommending you do is, as we're going through the webinar and the content, which Chris is collaborating with us on today, we'd appreciate your comments and your queries and questions in the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Just type in your queries and questions there, and then Steve and I will be tabling those with our panel. At the end of the webinar today, what we'll do is we'll walk through the resource page. For those of you, again, who are familiar, you'll know that we are not just a talking shop, although that is our favorite, listening to our own voices, Steve and I. But what we also like to do is we actually like to share some knowledge with you. We try to give you some resources based on the subject of the day. So, as well as an archive which Deloitte Keytree have very graciously set up. Deloitte have put together a place where we can record all of the previous 42 episodes, all of the video libraries are there, all of the resource pages from previous weeks are there, and you can dip into those as you wish. The resource page is really a resource which you can take away from the webinar, and then you can share that knowledge onward with any kind of audience. And in fact, you can use it to build your own content as well, whether it's presentations or webinars for yourself, if you wish. What we'll also do at the end of the webinar is give you an insight into next week's subject as well. So hopefully that'll tantalize and entreat you to try and join us next week as well. And if you find it interesting, or if you think the subject might be useful, please do share it amongst your network. Okay, if we may, Steve, I think the next slide, yes. So this is my opportunity to wax lyrical with you all, and it's also the point where I repay a debt to my old English teacher, Mrs. Allison. Mrs. Allison, this is that moment where I introduce Shakespeare. So all the world's a stage and everyone in it is a player. All right. For all of you, what does that mean for retail? Right? What it means is I'm trying to address something which I've heard about retail now, about experiences, about personalization. Everybody is playing some kind of part, whether it's the retailer, whether it's the customer, whether it's even the transport that gets you from A to B. Retail now is very definitely about experiences, about customization, about personalization. And what you'll be seeing is a lot of us are doing a lot of shopping online right now. Online is massive. All of us probably every day or every other day are shopping or doing some kind of transaction online. Well, that still leaves room where the online experience needs to be managed and needs to be smooth, needs to take the friction away from the shopping experience and to be a nice place to shop. But the bricks and mortar doesn't go away. That bricks and mortar is still an adjunct and an important fulfillment zone. It's an important shop window. It's an important area to socialize. And very importantly, it's an important area for the brand for your online shopping to be enlarged, exposed, elucidated in terms of expanding on the mission and the brand values that you're engaging in. And I'll give you as an example. On the left, you'll see a lady looking at some running shoes. That's actually a Under Armour experience image. Under Armour are now, what they're trying to do is create a sense of theater. It's trying to create a brand experience in their physical store environments, which gives you access to the brand, gives you access to experiences for the brand. And as you will know, some of the UK retailers, retailers like John Lewis, for instance, what they're doing is they're creating experience centers in their bricks and mortar stores. So what you can do is, let's say you're particularly interested in cookware, the kitchen. There are experience centers in the John Lewis network now, which concentrate on, for instance, cooking experiences, giving you education, giving you guides, bringing in guests who are experts, and then sharing that inside the physical store. So the store is not purely about transactions anymore. It can be about expanding that whole experience, that whole brand alignment with your chosen shopping partner. The same with Harrods. If you take a look at that Harrods image, is it really so removed from a stage, a theater stage? Take a look at the lighting. Take a look at how every item there is focused and made bright and beautiful and illuminated in front of your eyes to a degree that it looks like a sense of drama as you walk into a store like that. The whole point being, and our guests and Steve will expand on this, shopping is no longer just a transaction. It's become much more, and your relationship with your chosen brands, your chosen shopping retail outlet is going to become more about the experience, more about personalization, how they can interact with you and how they can persuade you that the journey with that brand, that retailer is much more worthwhile, much more enjoyable, and you should come back again. You should keep repeating that experience because you'll enjoy it. So with that, if I may, I'll pass that baton on to Steve. Steve, if you would.
Yeah, quite interesting. You used the word focus when the photos clearly aren't, which was quite novel, but never mind the principles there. It reminds me of something that the first time I worked in retail, my manager director, it was at Woolworths, God bless it, but he used a term, and he used to tell everybody that retail was factory theatre, was how he called it. He said the stores need to be a factory at night where we're replenishing and filling the shelves, but a theatre during the day where people actually enjoy coming in and getting the experience. And that was when I had dark hair, which was quite a while ago. But it's quite an interesting thing, and it's how things like that stick with you throughout your career. Shahid's done most of the context, but here's a quick context slide here about how we've moved in store, and thanks to McKinsey for this one that I've borrowed. But it's about, for all of your shopping journey, there can be a lovely mix of digital and in person, the human and the AI, the human and the machine. As Timo talked about in previous weeks, as other people have talked about, the blend of machine and human working together, the digital and in person. Right the way from pre-visit, from the awareness. So how do we drive awareness? That's typically digital. We experience the products we want. We could then go into stores. Using a simple example of it, running shoes, I used to select the ones that I thought looked great online. I would then go into Sweatshop that used to be around that would do an analysis of your running gait. And the guy would tell me, I'd say, what's my running style like? He'd say slow. I said, no, not that. I mean, actually the running style. And so we'd get the right shoes, and the ones that I thought couldn't fit, but we then had to work through because we needed it because of the way that I ran. And we changed that. We then increased the conversion using some of his tools. He'd show me how I ran and said, actually, you need an insole for that, which will make it even better. So we upsold it. And then after it, he was going, well, how's the running going? How's that? And we're engaging through digital, but then you go in the store and meet your favorite assistant. And we're seeing all of that through, whether you call it clienteling tools, whether we see it e-commerce, it's all about how we're developing the story and how we're developing the journey and the theatre as we move through. So I'm really, really pleased to have Chris with us today to talk through these 5 topics. And as always, they're a guide to the conversation. This is just going to be a conversation. Please chip in as and when you have a view or you disagree or whatever. But Chris, just before we start, do you want to give a very quick intro to yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. So I'm Chris Loveridge. I sit within SAP's customer experience division. So we look after all of the front office applications, customer facing platforms. So I look after some of the strategic retailers here in the UK, and pleasure to join you.
Brilliant. So I know we've worked together on quite a few opportunities over the last year and a half, where we've brought typically the clienteling solution that I work with together with all the commerce that you have from SAP and how we interact. And we've always had some really, really interesting discussions as to where your dividing lines are and things like that. And how do you see the whole blend of all of these types of personalization that's out there for that shopping journey, Chris, the link between everything?
I think everything starts with data, as is the norm these days. So we move from multi-channel to omni-channel, and then there's this theory now with customer adaptive. So actually, as a customer, I don't think about channels, whether I'm buying online, in store, but what I do expect is a brand to know about me, about my individual history with that brand. So whether I'm shopping online, whether I've had an issue with my order, that should extend in-store and online. I think everyone can relate to a fragmented experience where you bought something and then you go into a store and then you have to re-give your details. The retailers, in my opinion, that will win will be able to give a seamless experience, whatever channel that customer is shopping on, to have that 360 view of that customer, whether it be service history, whether it be sales history, the products they bought, because ultimately that is the clearest indication of how I want my relationship to be with that brand. Therefore, more product marketing, more sort of offers, events. So that's really the key fundamental of personalization, is actually knowing who I am on a one-to-one level versus sort of a one-to-many.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think just, I've used the term twice, I've just realized, and it's on a slide, clienteling, but just, in case anybody's just not sure of it, to just clarify, clienteling is the age-old tradition, basically, of you went into a store and your corner shop man used to know all about you, know all about your family, know everything about your history, when your birthday was, when your brother was born, and which football team you support. In bigger stores, that got translated into the assistant that used to be there with his little black book that knew everything about you and locked it up in a drawer and would ring you up, and in some places send birthday cards if it was one of the more luxury retailers. To nowadays, it's technology based. And over all that time, we saw that when it evolved from the guy in the corner shop, if he wasn't there, nobody could follow up. So you went in and you were anonymous to anybody else that worked there. With the little black book, it became a little bit better, but it was probably subject to the guy's shorthand and how he scribed or she scribed as to the details about you. To now we're on technology, and like Chris says, it's all about data, and it's all about the data availability and how we bring that together. But we still have it disconnected, don't we? And fragmented was a good word you used there, Chris, because how often do we buy things potentially in a lot of places and then buy stuff online, and at no stage does anybody realize that you bought a lot from them before, and you're treated as an unknown, anonymous when you go back in. I've got a furniture store near us where I've virtually kitted out the house, and every time I go back, they still don't know who I am because the assistants have changed and they've got no record. It's awful.
It is a real challenge. You think about if you're buying online, you have to put in a certain amount of customer data for like addresses, emails, e-receipts and things. Whereas in store, you may be just grabbing an item and then taking it out of the store, having purchased it. So it is a tricky one. Things like digital loyalty cards and stuff have tried to support that. So you used to have a physical loyalty card, then you'd have an online account, but actually maybe using digital apps so you can start syncing that purchase data from online and in store goes a long way of help. But you really need to have a clear strategy about how you're going to use that. So how are you going to encourage people to use the app, to use the loyalty program, so that you can start sort of blending that data.
And if I might say, Chris, Steve, this isn't just theoretical. There is empirical evidence to show that customizing and personalizing the experience for your shoppers actually leads to very important financial results for retailers. I'll give you an example. John Lewis did a pilot across some of their stores about 18 months ago now. Seems ages ago, but when bricks and mortar stores were open in mass, they did the pilot and they showed that actually the basket size for people having customized or personalized experiences was about 40% higher than if they hadn't had that kind of personalized experience through the store. And that, if you think about the majority of your customers, if they're enjoying the experience that much, if the basket size grows significantly, double digits, that's got to be a great result. It's a great result for the customer because they're feeling better about and they're getting the right products and they're feeling good about the experience, but it's also great for the retailer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be my one bit of tech sort of talk at this point, because obviously the data is one thing, but then there is the ability of people to think front end and back end. How often do we see within companies that we all work with where there's a digital department who are the cool guys that are creating the website and are creating all of this wonderful stuff, and then at the back end the whole supply side is well, that's the legacy technology, but it's actually got to be the whole end to end that needs to operate. And happy to talk to anybody about bimodal IT, but that's it. That's the bit of technology, because I think all of this needs to be on the focus of the business and the business approach.
We're seeing that as well. And personalization doesn't just have to be what products I like. It's where I want something to be delivered, what time of day suits me, how I like to interact with the brand. It's much broader than that. And I think as people have shifted their focus to more online, it's been clear that actually maybe the supply chain or operations to fulfill those orders have actually struggled to connect with the front office experience, which therefore devalues the whole end-to-end experience and obviously impacts things like personalization.
Absolutely. And I think we had Tom from Bring on the other week, who they were working on the last mile, and he did a great section on the last mile. And that's the ultimate last representation of the brand to the customer. And if something gets thrown at you or thrown at your front door, left outside and gets soaking wet, then that's your view of that retailer, really. It's just quite a way of destroying it all. So actually moving on and thinking about that whole personalized experience, I'm quite passionate about clienteling, as I've mentioned it quite a bit through the stuff. But it's beyond being personalized; it's also helping to be personable, and it's all about relationships. But even clienteling is evolving, because historically it used to be about knowing people better, knowing the 360 view of the customer, knowing everything about them, integrating their wish lists in. But now it's evolving even more to broadening the opportunity to offering even bigger services, offering the endless aisle, as it were, to bring in complementary products, not even stocked necessarily by that retailer. And in some ways, that's mirroring what's happening in the purely online world as well, Chris, isn't it? Because the offer now is not just always what that retailer typically sells in their stores, and they're extending their ranges quite significantly.
Yeah, I think a retailer needs to first of all understand what their their value is to a customer, what area of expertise, or what they want to be known as to that particular individual. And then they need to get their house in order in terms of the offer. So you mentioned in store, long are the days where you just go through all of the standard tills and things like that. You've now got EPOS with people walking around the store to give a much more personalized service. If you think of organizations like Halfords, for example, coming in and doing that one-to-one service and then placing an order from there. You mentioned about the whole idea of marketplaces. So you think of a pet store, for example. There is no reason why I shouldn't just sell pet food and things like that. You should be doing subscriptions for all of your key food supplies, but you should also be doing toys, you should be doing vaccines, you should be doing insurance. And that can be expanding via sort of mergers and acquisitions of other businesses, but also bringing in third parties to offer that end-to-end solution. So essentially you want to own that customer relationship from the start right to the end, whether it's been services that you offer or from others as well.
Definitely. I would say that you touched on pets. Let's use that as an example. Everybody loves pets, right? In COVID, there's been actually what they're calling a baby boom for pets. So during the past 12 months, apparently the inquiries for acquiring pets or through shelters and places like that has gone up by about 60% or something like that. And one of the consequences of that is businesses like, for instance, Pets at Home, some of us will be familiar with. Their CEO has gone online and spoken about this baby boom for pets. And he's spoken about how his business is trying to not only respond to the increasing demand for the most obvious things like pet food, but he's also talking about pet grooming, veterinary services for pets, et cetera, et cetera. So it's vertically integrating his retail into a series of additional spaces, but also horizontally integrating as well into services. And the interesting thing is, I mean, you can do the Pets at Home models where they've actually acquired some of these complementary services, or as you've spoken about, Chris, in terms of marketplaces, you can use technology, the likes of Miracle, etc., to actually expand your portfolio by having these contractual virtual relationships which are shown on a marketplace using technology. So you can offer the core offering and then expand that catalog with third-party companies without having to invest in more infrastructure, more warehouses, a new business model. You can have that done virtually for you using technology, can't you?
And I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think Pets at Home is a good example. So they are up against competition from pure sort of digital natives that can offer subscription-based services and things like that, which is a real threat because of the less overheads and costs and things, and you can be a real specialist. But what Pets at Home do have is a network of stores that they can use to build a personal relationship or a brand affiliation with. So you can take your pet in, you can play with certain areas, you can meet people and get advice on what might be the right food for your dog, the breed of dog that you have, for example. And then you can take away and link that in-store experience online. We're using your membership in their case, it's called Very Important Pets. So you can use that multi-channel engagement with the brand to really capture that customer and engage with them across multiple different touch points.
I think it's the old history, isn't it? It's the old story about the more you go online, everybody looks at the big opportunity, but you do also increase your competition as well. It becomes more competition comes available. But we're seeing that in a couple of ways. And one of the biggest and ones that most people integrate with or interact with is probably Next, that have totally changed their model in the UK over the recent couple of years, where they've actually deliberately built the platform, and your online offer through Next includes so many brands, and they've openly said that their platform strategy is their way forward, which is a great way of doing it, a huge change and a major cultural change, obviously, for them as an organization, and great investment made a couple of years ago or a few years ago to actually build that platform. And we're also seeing similar things where we're getting partnerships with some of the more high end and interacting with some of the whatever we call them. I would use them. I would used to call it secondhand, but I think we'll call it pre-loved or pre-owned or vintage clothing,
Vintage,
where
yes.
some of them are actually bringing it in and being able to, to rent to get the secondhand stuff. So actually sell the same product multiple times. And then there's the renting option as well that we're seeing at some places. It's quite an interesting change how it's all moving ahead, bringing all these various aspects together and learning based upon what you actually like and what your personal preferences are across it all.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time for the high street. We've seen obviously the Debenhams brands being bought up, Topshop, Topman. So those organizations, traditionally a heavy high street footprint, have now gone to digital natives, which would suggest that perhaps people are moving away from that in-store experience. And you see John Lewis are announcing some certain closures as well. But on the flip side, we're also seeing businesses like Gymshark, who are always online and now opening stores, not necessarily just to sell product, but more, as you mentioned, kind of like experience centers as well. So I think for those organizations that can really use physical stores as a blended experience with the online channel will really, really succeed, because at the end of the day, people still want to go and touch, to feel, to understand the brand in a physical sense. That experience can never be replicated online. So having a really clever strategy around that will definitely prove dividends for those that can do it.
Yeah.
If I may, Richard has just made a really good challenge, or asked us to look at something which is really good, which is hyper personalization. If we're talking about brands and retailers really focusing in on their customers, then surely that should lead to a kind of almost a dialogue where the customers' needs, wants, priorities are reflected back to the retailer. So for instance, net zero and environmental concerns, sustainability, etc., that should be coming back towards the retailer and should be reflected in their practices and their trading. Also societal responsibility. So retailers, quite often, especially if we're talking about bricks and mortar, they usually tend to be within communities. There tends to be, a locale and things happening around that community. What is it that, retailers are doing to connect with local communities and look after good causes, for instance, homelessness, food poverty, shelter, etc., etc. Do you have, gentlemen, Steve, Chris, do you have examples of where retailers are using that relationship with their customers to figure out what they want to do on sustainability and on social responsibility?
If I may, the one company that I've sort of been quite close with and work and springs to mind is the Co-op, who are really, really big on supporting community-led projects, sustainability, and all of those key topics. And I think it was Steve Morels, the group CEO, who was talking about that actually, if you have a relationship with your customer on a more personal level about what's more important to them, it'll actually reflect in actually the more that they spend with you and have sort of commercial benefits as well. And an example of that is they revamped their membership program back in September, and they have a couple of policies. So you get individualized, personalized offers, you get Co-op across the board offers, but you also have the ability to contribute a proportion of your spend to charities that you support. So Mind, I think, is an example, and they have Food Share, which is for shelter. And the idea is that they want to generate 6 million in community benefits over the next 12 months. And what they're actually seeing is that is encouraging adoption both of the membership program, so those customers are spending more, but also they're being able to do more with the local community, and that whole value stuff is something that people are really buying into.
That's great. And if I might say as well, in our previous episode, we had Plan Zeros. Steve introduced us to Plan Zeros, which is a fantastic technology solution to a societal problem. What you've got is food and grocery, restaurants, other distributors of food who come to the end of the day, they've got leftover stock. What do they do with it? They don't want to throw it in the rubbish. So what they do is they go onto the Plan Zeros platform. The platform highlights that there is a food stock available, and it also highlights people who are looking for food donations. So it could be OAP homes, it could be low-income families, whoever. And what the platform does is introduces the two with volunteers in the middle who pick up from the food and grocery and deliver to the donors or the intended donation recipients.
Yeah, no, very true. I was going to say that's a good use of the marketplace. I was going to bring up there. Thanks for stealing me thunder. But there's enough. Fortunately, I've got another one that I prepared earlier. That it was actually yesterday. I was doing some work with a pharmacy chain out of Ireland, and we were doing a lot of discussions around particularly the social side and how they have actually got to. They know so many. It's very community based. They're very much, rather than being a retailer that does pharmacy products, they're very much a pharmacy that also retails as well. And what they were talking about is they see the as a family ages through time, and their different needs, obviously within that community, within the pharmacy, etc., varies. Whether it's kids and whether they're moving up to require different treatments, or even the elderly, so they link in and they've got agreements with, say, mobility providers, so people that will help provide medical aids, mobility aids, things like that, and they interact in there. And in that point, that pharmacy becomes the focus of the community and the enabler to a whole lot of other services and capabilities around in the area. It was really quite interesting seeing how, and it also proved to me that whereas typically we address a lot of these things, and because we are all immersed in technology, we always think about the technology first, as traditionally, whereas actually it's having the idea of that process and the idea of bringing everything together. It's the old Walmart principle of, let's prove it works, then let's automate a bit of it, and then let's automate the lot, rather than just thinking solution first. And it was quite a sobering sort of session for me.
I think like corporate and social responsibility used to be a bit of a buzzword and a quota that you had to tick, but it's now what people are demanding. Societal challenges and impacts have never been more prevalent, and people are really taking a care in what brands are doing. And you can alienate a customer base if you don't do that. Sort of bad press. You think of maybe Primark back in the day that had sort of the workshops and things that can have real negative connotations. Another company that I'd urge everyone to have a look at is BrewDog. For those that like the IPAs and things. They have got some really cool net zero targets and sustainability targets, and they're really pioneering in the way that they're pushing things to be 100% sustainable. So they're opening new manufacturing sites, they're opening new stores completely running on electric fuel and things. So some really cool stuff going out of that. And they've recently done an exercise to raise additional shares where you can buy into the company, and if they hit sustainable targets, you get payout from the back of that. So they're really trying to connect with their customers, both on terms of their product but the values that they stand for.
And it's equally important for the associates in the store to know all the various things that the business stands for as well, because the customer and the consumer is getting more and more savvy going in and wanting to have the discussion and about, I've heard about you offering this charitable or this benefit, and they need to know about it, which is again part of the technology that we can provide, that store associates need to be provided with, so that they actually are on a higher level than the customers coming in. They know more than what the customers coming in. Originally it used to be all about the products, but actually it needs to be as much about the purpose and as much about the organization as purely about the products, he says, which is cool. So taking that forward and assuming that customers are shopping the brand, not the channel, we've covered that really nicely. It's all about common messaging. It's all about common, well, not necessarily common pricing, but at least a matched pricing. It's matched promotions. It's about how do we then bring the term customer adaptive. I've seen it mentioned a few times, and Chris mentioned it, or was it Shade mentioned it early? But go on, one of you can have the floor and explain what customer adaptive means.
I think that was yourself, wasn't it, Chris? You used that phrase.
Yeah, so it's the whole concept that I, as a consumer, don't think about shopping online and in store. It's more about how I want to shop, when I want to shop, and I should have a seamless experience about engaging with that particular brand. So personalization would mean that you know how I like to shop, you know my preferences, and so you should be able to communicate with me in that way, and also in a seamless fashion as well, whether I come on in line or in store, then you should know that actually I am who I am, and that's how I want to engage with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I've just seen a great comment by Kate in the chat that I just need to definitely bring out at this time, which is around how we're blending different types of sectors together. And I've always been quite passionate about how sectors don't have to be entrenched into what they currently do. Retail's always done this, therefore we'll always do it. And Kate mentions about replicating our background in hospitality and the focus on the impartial angle, when she launched a JV for Tiger stores in Wales and Bristol. Really interesting. But said investing lots of time and energy in training and on customer experience, personalizing the experience. And it just sounds like really, really good. No online facility, but we're able to stand out compared to other similars. And the key bit is the very last line. Where we were different to large brands was that we saw this training and focus as an investment and not a cost. That's a really good way of describing it. And it's all about the staff in the stores as well, isn't it? It's all about your investment in those people, because those people are representing your brand out there, and which you can get your consistency if you're doing it online through commerce, and it always will do it the same way. But what you need to do is try and get that blend together with your people and your staff and your associates to just replicate that experience through a large estate as well.
And that's proved out by empirical evidence again. I've seen studies which look at the difference in results from empowered, passionate, knowledgeable staff compared to people who are not so motivated in your staffing. And it can be multiples of earning or revenue potential from a set of staff who've got that customer experience skill, who are motivated and who are knowledgeable about the goods and services that you're selling. And when I say multiples, I'm talking 2, 3, 4 times as much revenue at the end of each day can be accrued or attributed to that motivated sales assistant or that colleague.
Oh, no, totally. And you can see it from all different types of stores and places and whatever. How does Richer Sounds actually, that their whole experience is why people go there, because you want to talk to an expert. It's how Best Buy used to do it with the experts of the blue shirts when they were.
Perfect example, Steve, because Best Buy, Richer Sounds, under the leadership of Julian Richer, actually holds the Guinness World Book of Records. And I don't know if it's still the same case now, but they used to hold the Guinness Book of Records world record for the highest value or volume of sales per square foot of retail store. And it's not just down to having good product. Obviously, that's a big part of it. It's about what he does with his sales team, his colleagues in store, and how they interact with customers. And anybody who's been inside a Richer Sound store will know very human, very down-to-earth people who talk to you one-to-one, who are genuinely interested in helping you on your shopping journey.
You think about Apple, similar to that as well in the stores. It's amazing to go in there and see all of the technology that you're able to pick up and feel the product and have a play around with it. And then you've got people that can actually guide and advise you, not necessarily there just to sell, but actually to help you with issues, knowing that you can actually get something tangible from your visit to the store, which will always be there. I think that John Lewis have always had a good reputation for a good in-store experience, and people like that personal touch. They like to speak to people, and I don't think that will ever go.
Well, earlier you spoke about how a brand will have the majority or a large amount of sales online, and how is it transferred to the bricks and mortar. I'll give you an example. my son, who was 12 at the time, it was his birthday. We took him to London. We went shopping with him, and he himself booked a experience at the Apple store on Regent Street. He's 12 years old, and he's so into awareness around the Apple brand. He wanted to attend a photography course at the Apple store. So it's a photography course, right? It's not selling Apple products overtly, but what it's doing is it's giving it was a really interesting hour and a half. We sat with him and went through, as the educators and trainers showed people how to create wonderful photography, wonderful moving images and videos using their Apple products. And there was like a 20-foot high video screen which everybody could transmit onto or broadcast onto and share their images. It was a great experience. And the reason why I mention it is because that has done something, I'm sure, for my son in terms of expanding the brand, in terms of giving value to the brand, putting an emphasis or an underscore under Apple inside his psyche.
It's gonna cost you.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, you're going to be in a smaller loft for the next few weeks.
When you talk about cost, please use the past tense.
Yeah.
I've had a journey already. I know there's a there's a horizon as well somewhere. Yeah.
It brings up an interesting point, is that it's no longer enough to sell just a product or a service. You need to differentiate with something, and differentiating with an experience of how you engage with the customers, whether that be something like customer service, is how you're going to attract and retain customers. And I think that's really important for brands and retailers to consider.
Yeah, definitely. And I think certainly as well, post-purchase experience as well is vitally important. I think one of the things that we used to do at a well-known optical retailer that I used to be at, we used to encourage that people would get a call after, and they should get a call after picking up their glasses, particularly things like varifocals, which can be very marmitey. You may either use them and you may get them, or you may not. You may not be able to deal with them. But it's that idea of that call, and there's nothing that actually makes you feel warmer as a customer when somebody rings. Well, how are you doing with that? How's that working for you? I think it was a TV I got from somewhere online. I actually bought it online. It was the same product I could have got at any of the big sheds, but I bought it online purely on price. But then within a week of having it, I got a call from the same people that said, Mr. Ingram, how are you doing? How's the telly doing? Have you discovered this feature yet? And, being a typical fella, I hadn't actually read the instruction book, so I didn't know that feature was there. And it was something that was really good. But it meant that I then went back to that online store or that retailer to come to buy more, because I thought, well, I'm getting the extra value. I'm not just getting the box. And we're seeing, we talk about experience. I mean, one of the best theatres and experiences that I'm sure everybody on here will remember will be Hamleys, in terms of experience and getting taken in there and parents dragging you out because they haven't spent the vast fortune on all the toys that you wanted. There's just so much in that whole thing of experience that becomes a destination in its own right. So it's all about experience for me as well, but post-purchase as well.
It becomes a tourist attraction, doesn't it? And then you go,
definitely.
You enjoy your time there, and then you end up buying something off the back of it. I think the customer service post feedback is really important. So SAP, just a bit of a plug, have invested quite heavily in the whole category of experience management, and that can be through your digital journey or actually the in-store, to capture in the moment feedback as to certain problems that you've encountered or certain things that you change about the service or experience, so that you can arm teams that have the ability to action that feedback in real time, to address any concerns and to support customers throughout their journey. Because I think people expect that things are going to go wrong, whether it be products or something they bought, but to be proactive and for someone to have the information to hand to help you will go a long way in satisfying a return visit.
And what we're seeing all the more, and I spoke actually to two people this morning who mentioned a similar experience, was during lockdown. was the experience of being able to talk to store associates who were remote, actually to buy a TV, been a common theme discussed this morning. But they went and they actually had a video call through with a device with a store associate on there, and that store associate was able to then show them the product. They were then able to talk them through, but it was just that bit more personal by having a video call rather than a conference call. It was just, and in some cases actually where they were operating in the store because they were still open for click and collect, so they were able to actually show the product, and it just actually continued that bit in-store experience via digital, via whatever.
And that is a great point, because what you can do is, with the use of technology, you can pivot your business. You can be flexible and adaptive, even when a storm hits like COVID, which nobody was expecting. Nobody knew how it would impact your business. But some businesses, and the example was, I think, Dixon's. I used that from my own personal experience. You could actually have a video call with a store associate, either in store or wherever their remote working location was, and they would personally guide you through the website, because the store wasn't open, right? You're in lockdown. They would personally guide you through the website. They would guide you through the stock availability, and they would help you, clientele you through a purchasing decision, which I thought at the time was fantastic, because best will in the world, we had a little service bump with chatbots and all of that automation available online, but a lot of people are, let's say that they're not so enamored. The chatbot thing has played itself out, and people are looking for a higher level of service than that. There's nothing better than a knowledgeable, enthusiastic store associate who's talking to you, calling you by name, and helping you.
Yeah, I think it follows. Go, Chris. I'll let you.
I was just going to say, I think that the technology is interesting. There's loads of cool solutions and technology out there, but it's how you can apply that. You want to arm your frontline staff, your teams, to be comfortable in how they use the technology to deliver the experience. I think sometimes you can oversell the technology and it's only as good as the actual application of it. So I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the support with sort of consultancies and SIs and things about how you bring that technology into something that's actually tangible for the end consumer and for the employees that work there.
Yeah, and it brings it back to one of the discussions a few weeks ago. Realize just how many topics we've covered during this whole series so far, and no doubt will in the future, but where we were talking about adoption. And one of the big things about all these technologies, and we've seen it with the clienteling approach, that in order to get it adopted and in order to get it used and to use it to its max, it's got to be adopted by the people that actually want to use it. So actually get them involved in the design of it and the development of it. Don't sit in the ivory tower and think that as an exec you know best as to what will work best with people. We've found it works best if it operates exactly the same as the mobile phone, because that's in their pockets all the time and they're coming to use it. But you've got to give them a reason to look at it. So what is it? It might be store information. It might be task-related information. It might be as simple as on the device they can look and see what their commission's earned. That makes it that sort of compelling and something that always gets adopted and used. But it's very true. It's all about the use case rather than the actual technology for technology's sake, because we've seen that all. It never works. It never sticks whenever that happens. So what I was thinking of going through, and I got this exceptional examples section on here because I thought it would be quite useful based upon what we've all been involved in during this time, is, have we seen some exceptional examples of personalization, of where people have either pivoted or during lockdown to do something and provide a remote service better or do something different? I've got a couple in my mind, but
I'd like to start with one.
Go on, you go.
Having a young son means that you get exposed to, generational trends, insights, whatever you want to call it. He shared with me, he and his friends love personalization. They love customizing the products that they buy. And I'm giving you an example here, you know, like Nike or Adidas, you go onto their website, you can actually create customized trainers, customized clothing, etc., etc. So you can create color combinations, you can create design combinations, you can even put your name or a chosen logo, as long as it's not offensive, obviously. But you can choose your name and put it onto products which these gargantuan brands are now ready to customize and deliver to you. And I just think that it's the next step, if you like, around personalization. It's, I not only want to have products which are cool and are branded and, you know, which convey some kind of value which I buy into. That's what the kids are saying now. But I also want for my product to be slightly different to my friends who I'm going to walk to school with.
Yeah. Yeah, I can just see you with your personalized new normal trainers on.
Yeezys. You got to use the right terms here. Yeezy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been stung for that as well.
Oh, and watch out for Supreme clothing. Why? Other than the price, I failed to see it.
It's turning now into just an old guy's moaning session.
Well, it is.
We're not careful.
Yeah.
Whereas Chris still buys that stuff, you see.
Well, I'm not sure.
So, did you see anybody do anything really clever, really special during the turnaround during the lockdown or anything, Chris, that managed to bring this up?
And our audience, we'd love to hear from our audience as well, please. Yeah. Just let us know what good examples you've seen.
The only thing I quite liked was that you've got a point around B2B to B2C, and we partner with an organisation called Breaks, who work with a lot of organisations to supply food and catering supplies to prisons, schools, the hospitality sector, etc., which was obviously really hardly hit during the pandemic. So what they were able to do is to pivot their business, which has been heavily B2B for a long time, and spin up a direct-to-consumer site in just 7 days. So it showed the flexibility of the platform that we provide, but also actually a business is willing to adapt to a situation. And then they started sending care packages out to the most vulnerable individuals. And it's now opened their eyes to actually say we could actually spin up a direct-to-consumer site and build that out. And I thought that was a really, really good example of how organizations that have historically operated in one way to change and adapt the way that they serve the market.
No, I think that's fascinating. I remember reading about that, and it was, yeah, because otherwise their business would have died as well. It was
all this stock that they needed to use, and what better way to help people that were struggling.
Well, what an incredible outlet for the leadership of that business that suddenly saw a roadblock, a massive wall go up in front of the traditional custom base, and then you were able to use that technology to pivot, as you say, and create a B2C offering instead of just a B2B. I mean, the relief, I can only imagine the relief, but also the excitement of being able to open up a whole new sales channel, a whole new direction.
Yeah. And one of the ones that I like, I've listed their personal shopping, but it was a company called Suit Supply from over, I think they're Belgium or the Netherlands. And they did this great idea when they reopened after the first lockdown, because obviously there was the fitting room availability, you're not allowed to use it, and that couldn't be used for a while. They introduced a whole load of a booking system whereby you could book a fitting room, but then they would also curate like a mini capsule of stuff that you may be interested in based upon your previous buying and what you bought, or whether you were moving into more leisure. And I thought that was a really good idea as to how you would bring it in. And then also you could try it on in store, but then they'd also built within the app in store a mobile app integrated with the clienteling app of the associate to then say, actually, this size isn't right. Could you bring me the next one? So I tried to make it virtually contactless all the way through. It was really, really innovative. I really liked it. And then Claire last week told us of two great examples that were by the independents and that were not from big chains at all. One was that lady in the fashion store, that she was 57, lockdown came, she'd never used technology, was a total technophobe, and then but then slowly started making our Facebook videos and selling and then sold. And it was how many 100% increased? I can't remember what the scale of it was. It was about 500% increase on sales, going to all over the world, to Canaries and to other countries. And it was just quite incredible and shows how it can grow. To the farm store that Claire talked about, where you pay so much and they give you a tray of produce every week based upon your likes, dislikes, preferences. It was all really good. So no, it's lots of interesting things around that whole area, and I'm conscious of time now as I've just glanced down as the time has whizzed again. But any other exceptional examples you want to think of, Shahid, just to close off that little section there?
I guess I'd also cite the fact that if we don't think talk or discuss it, I think it would be amiss of us. But digital currencies, right? There's a whole load of innovation going out there where people they're wondering about traditional investments, traditional currencies, and digital currencies, Bitcoin, etc., and blockchain. Blockchain is really having its use cases elaborated now. And so I'm thinking technology and some of the early adopter technology from 3, 4, 5 years ago has suddenly found its own seedbed, and it's found during COVID a lot of use cases. So things like blockchain and digital currencies, I thought were particularly innovative, and people have started en masse adopting and using them. And I love some of the use cases around blockchain now, which in terms of reliability, in terms of authenticity and avoiding duplication or replication with false products, etc. I think those were particularly strong during the past 9 months.
Hold that thought and hold those thoughts, because Andrew Daly, who came on earlier, is coming back in a few weeks.
Okay, great.
Hold your blockchain thoughts. Our blockchain guru is going to be back in a few weeks. But no, that's very true. And I hope you've got your Bitcoin, and I hope you got it at the right time.
No, I wasn't wealthy enough to buy Bitcoin, I'm afraid. I was too late to the party. But we've got some examples from our audience. So a furniture maker where you design your own sofa online. As it's difficult to get about, they have vans kitted out like a living room. Wow. And will drive the show van to your home and show you a in situ example of that sofa. That's pretty interesting. And then we've got from Michael, I don't know, composition rather than transaction. Sorry, that's a separate point. But yeah, so thank you, Derek. That's a really interesting one. So it's a mobile showroom, right? You design your sofa and they come to you with an in situ replay of what your sofa will look like.
That's exactly it.
It's a bit of virtual reality, just more physical than virtual. Yeah. Interesting. I know I've seen there's a furniture place near us uses virtual reality glasses of fits it into your living room, see how the sofa looks. But do they actually check it totally for scale and size before the furniture van brings it and you realise that it won't fit into your house?
I've downloaded the Maker and Son app before, and so I actually bought a sofa recently from them, and I'm buying a couch where I put the app up into my living room, and it was perfect. And when it came, it was the size that it said it would be. I was very surprised. But when the van arrives out, like, they're nothing short of giving you a cup of tea and a rich tea biscuit while you're sitting down in the sofa. But Derek, it's a really great service.
Yeah, you're going to have to plug their name. Give them a little plug on the webinar. What are they?
Yeah, Maker and Son. That's them, and their Instagram is fantastic. They even have a vegan range, Steve. You love that, as well. So non-animal products put into the building of their sofa. So they've recognised the shift to veganism.
Wow.
And adapted the product around it. So
Maker.
Yeah, Maker.
Thank you.
That's it. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Derek. So with that, I've got to draw it to a close because we're now hitting 1:30. So that's the discussion to a close. Thanks again, Chris. That's been awesome as always. And
thank you,
Shahid. And then we whip on to, if there's any questions, please feed them through emails or whatever, and we will get back to you. But Shahid, quickly.
Thank you. Yeah. So quickly for everyone, the resource page. You've got Chris Loveridge's bio there. Please do reach out to Chris, say hello, connect with him on LinkedIn. And you've also got smiley faces from myself and Steve with our contact details if you want to follow up on today's or any previous week's subjects. On the left-hand side, you'll see some use cases about personalization, which Chris has shared with us from Greg's and John Paul Mitchell. So please do read those. Those will be expanding on the whole idea of personalization and how retailers are connecting with their customers. You'll also see some additional useful resources. So in terms of clienteling, brand, the future, etc., we've added some links for you so you can dive down into the subject a little deeper. And in terms of some thought leadership from the likes of Deloitte, Accenture, McKinsey, etc., at the bottom of the page, you'll see links to, again, either papers, videos, or articles on this particular subject. For next week, we would entice you and encourage you to join us. That's 3 N's there. Did you see that, Steve? That was impressive.
Good. The course is stuck.
Thank you. The next week is all about the middle mile. So you've heard about the final mile, you've heard about the starting mile. We've now found the middle mile, and we've got our guest expert next week. He's going to take us through and give us an idea of why it's important to you and why you should be thinking about it in how you plan your business. So with that, I'd like to thank Chris again. Thank you very much for your collaboration, Chris. We really appreciated it. And with that, I'll say thank you to all of our audience as well. And I look forward to seeing you all and collaborating with you again next week, I hope. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much. And yes, as always, thanks very much to everybody. Thanks to the team. Thanks to Shahid. And yeah, the middle mile next week, it's a regular guest, Mike McCloy, and his colleague are going to take us through their discoveries of the middle mile and the possibilities there. So for all logistics guys out there, it's really interesting. Can't wait. Thanks very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for everything. And thanks, Joanna. Thanks, Claire, Martin, and all the Lucas and the team that bring this all together.
Yeah, thanks.
See you everybody next week, and look forward to it.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.